Following on from this, so this is a perfect follow-on. We are delighted to have Dr. Trish Murphy, who's with the project officer for the rivers, the Inishown Rivers Trust, and she worked alongside Professor Mary Burke in relation to that the scoping project that they did, and she's going to speak to us now about natural flood management in Inishown. So Trish, if you want to share your slides, that would be great, and welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Right. Thank you very much, everyone. Right. Okay. Okay. Can you see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. So hi, everyone. My name is Trish Murphy. And today I'm just going to talk to you about some of the nature-based solutions that the Inishown Rivers Trust are doing. I will cover the flooding, but I'm also going to talk about some of the other things that we've done. Just to let people know who the Inishown Rivers Trust are. Inishown Rivers Trusts are cropping up all over Ireland at the moment. We are based right up at the top of County Donegal with Malin Head as our most northerly point, and we cover the whole of the Inishown Municipal District. So our journey has been, progressing through the last few years. So since 2013, when the community first started to discuss the idea of a trust. So just to let you know what we do, so we'll do anything related to engaging people with rivers, doing cleanups. We go to agricultural shows and festivals, exhibitions. We do a tree planting program every year. We do some monitoring on the rivers, and we encourage volunteers to get engaged in that. And we also provide a lot of training for our volunteers. And the reason I wanted to talk about volunteers is because they're extremely important to us. We've only got one staff member, and that's me. I can't do everything. Our board are all voluntary. So we are limited by the amount of people that can do things on the ground. So engaging volunteers is extremely important. And there are many, many good reasons to do that. But why do the volunteers get engaged themselves? So a range of different reasons for this. Mostly it's because they're passionate about the environment. But also it can be things like they're looking for occupational experience. So there might be students, or they might be people who are trying to upskill on something that's particularly relevant to their job. Health and well-being has become particularly important, and it's one of the real benefits that we see from the volunteers getting engaged on our projects. So the benefits from engaging community are on both sides. So the community benefits in whatever way that they feel is appropriate for them, or the reasons that they're doing it. And from the trust side, it really helps us to get to the right solutions. So identifying the right solutions for the right place is very, very important, because one of the things that we do is we stand around at the river while we're working, talking. There's conversations going on all the time. That's where we learn about where the problems are. We learn about things that have happened in the past. We learn about the kind of solutions that people think might work, or what are the barriers to those solutions. And then it's also opportunities for us to share knowledge, and that increases acceptance of what's happening on our rivers. So, people might think flooding is caused by too many trees in the river, and we can discuss that with them and sort of help them to see that that's not actually the problem. So it also increases ownership as well on the projects that we work on. And we do like this co-design, co-production approach, and that's something that we've implemented since we've started. We always talk to people very, very closely, dealing with the landowners. For the long-term benefit of the projects, it's really important to develop those partnerships, particularly with the community, but also with the agencies and our funders. So in terms of training, our Inishown River Guardians program provides specialized training for our volunteers, and this has been a really useful tool for us for moving forward and for learning about nature-based solutions ourselves. So it increases knowledge for the community, and it increases knowledge for us within the board as well. So we've run this program since 2019. First of all, it was covered, the funding was covered by the EU Leader Programme, and now this year it's been covered by Rethink Ireland. So what we do for the volunteers is we provide them with a passport, a training passport. So there is a program of modules, and they can get their passport filled in and stamped to show that they've done these courses. We try to make the courses certified. That really helps the community, and we find that the volunteers love the fact that they can get certified courses. But that's not always possible, because some of the things that we do are very, very specialized. So the training courses that we have run to date are on the left-hand side of this slide here. And then the ones on the right-hand side are the ones that we're running this summer. Okay, so there's quite a lot of practical skills in here, and that's really important. And that's one of the things that people really love about the volunteer engagement opportunities that we provide. If they can get down into the rivers, they can get mucky and dirty, and it's very satisfying for people to do that, and also to know that they're having a positive impact when they're doing that. So in terms of nature-based solutions, the Trust journey with the nature-based solutions began back in 2017, when we first invited the Wild Trout Trust to visit the Culdaff River. Now, this was organised by the Culdaff Community Angling Association, of which several of the members are also members of the board of the Inishown Rivers Trust. And following on from that, we identified sections of the river that had challenges. Now, there's quite a lot. And so what we did was we took photographs of all the different challenges, and then we sat down and we looked at, well, what can we do here? And what kind of solutions could we provide? So here's an example of one. So on the left-hand side, you can see what it looked like on our advisory walk in 2017. And then in 2018, we came back, and with the Wild Trout Trust, we built a revetment. So this was a natural revetment using brash and wood to build up the bank. The point was to arrest the erosion, the significant erosion that was happening here, and to reduce the sedimentation that was going into the river as well. So another section of the site that we did that year was this. So the first section that we did was up here. That previous slide was just up here. And then this is the second section that we did. These are quite long sections. This was us working on the river then. You can see how badly eroded it was. But this is it 2 years later. And you can see how much it's recovered. It's also being fenced by the Lochs Agency, and there's pasture pumps put in for livestock. So the farmer is very, very happy with this solution. So we continue to monitor this. There's generally very, very little maintenance goes on in these, but we can have a check just to see about the integrity of the revetment, but it's 3 years now and we haven't had to do anything at all. So it survived extremely well. So another revetment project that we did was on the Glen River, which was last year. So this is where we aimed to restore 4 sections of the bank, working with 2 different landowners. And we also were looking at fish movement up the river, and then we were putting in features around this work. So there was a lot of planning, as Eugene mentioned there earlier. There was a lot of planning goes into these projects, and our initial desktop survey brought us to looking at historically what was happening with the river. And so we go back over the GeoHive historic plans that are available, what's available to us at least, and to the public in general. So this goes back about 200 years. And what we saw was that there's a lot of lateral movement in this river. And people talk about that on the ground anyway. It's a very flashy system. In some ways, the landowners just have sort of throw their hands up and say, I don't know what you can do with that river. So what we did was we looked at this, and we did note through the mapping exercise that we did that the river was stable in parts over the 200 years. And in this grey area that I've put in here, there was 6 historic mills in this area. And then below the mills, this is where the river showed a lot of lateral movement. So you can see how modifications have affected the movement in the river. And there was also some planning developments here along the river, so they may have impacted as well. But there was some quite significant movement in here. So these are the 4 sites that we chose. And the other planning that we did was also like a lot of talking to the agencies to get permission, and that would be the IFI and the national parks. And then we also collected a lot of brash, Christmas trees with the community. We had a diver in to do one of the deeper sites, and we were also had EcoEye filming us during that time when we were doing the preparation work, collecting the material at the time. So this is us actually doing the work at that time in September and October. So we had a good group of volunteers in. About half of these volunteers had been trained. So if we get a volunteer who wants to engage with a project like that, we pair them up with somebody who has been trained. So a trained person and an untrained person work together. So that helps for the transfer of knowledge about how to do particular tasks. This is one of the sites. So this is a very accessible site, and it's great for people to come and see this site. There's a bridge that's gone over the river. This bridge was becoming a barrier to fish movement, and I'll talk about that in a minute. This section here, the farmer had a lot of erosion occurring, particularly during the 2017 flood. So he had tried to solve this problem by putting in boulders, which don't work particularly well. So what we did was we assessed this, and we decided that we would take out a group of boulders here at the bridge end, along the bank there. So we took out quite a few boulders there. Then along this section, we left the boulders in place because we were going to try stuffing it with brash and planting it up with wild willow instead. And then below here, the boulders had actually been shifted on by the floods, and we did a full revetment there. So just to show you, and the first part of the revetment, how it progressed over 3 days. So this is day one with all the boulders. There was a metal girder in there, bales of hay were thrown in just to try and stop that erosion. So we pulled all of that out, and then we got the digger while they were there to put in the wooden stakes that we need to hold the revetment in place. And then on day 3, the volunteers came in and built the revetment. So that's what it looks like at the end of the day. Very important to get it done in the day, because that night we had a flood on the river, which completely inundated over that revetment. And of course, we were all very worried overnight, but it was absolutely fine the next day. So here it is 6 months later. This is the same section again here on the right. You can see how much sediment has been dropped onto the revetment there. This is completely solid now. You can also see that there's bits of eroded. So we've had several floods in the meantime, and these have been bankful floods as well. So you can see that some of the bank has eroded down here, but it falls onto the revetment, and that actually helps with the reprofiling of the bank. So it's worked really well. We've also had an alder tree that's gotten trapped in the revetment. This is actually regrowing now. It got trapped about a month after the work was done. So we've left it there to see how it's gone, and what we'll probably do is pin it in place, and the landowner was happy enough for us to do that. Now, the other thing that happened—
Sorry, just a 2-minute warning there.
Right, okay, I'll move on quickly. The other thing that happened here is that we had deposition, because we killed the energy in the river, and what we expected would happen was that we would create gravel sandbars, and that's exactly what happened here. And this gravel sandbar dropped in front of the boulders here, and that has protected that section of the bank, which was what we were hoping would happen. So here's us putting in the baffles. These baffles have improved fish passage. The average depth over the bridge apron before we did this was 5 centimetres, and now has gone up to 20 centimetres. And the IFI are very happy with how this has worked out for us. Downstream, we had another revetment, just to show you these are the rubble, and this is the revetment in place. And then around the corner, here's another one, a good example of this is us putting in the revetment, and this is it 6 months later, which is completely filled up again. So the outcomes have been really, really good. It's trapped sediment, it's reduced sedimentation in the water, it's providing habitat for fish and vertebrates, so it's been really good that way. So just to go on to the flooding here, obviously everybody here knows about the Inishown flood in 2017. At that time, we wondered what we could do. So we went through this process of raising awareness about nature-based solutions for flooding. And that's when we started the project with Mary Burke. So the project identified these solutions in a few different areas, but what we did was we moved on with the communities, and we settled on the Clonmany community to run an implementation phase for the project. So this is where it's very important to combine this community knowledge and scientific knowledge. We can't move on with natural flood management unless the community are engaged in it. So co-designing and co-producing these nature-based solutions is critical to the success of them. So in the previous slides that you were watching from Mary Burke, this is the Ballyhallion River here. So this is part of this catchment. The whole of the Clonmany catchment is like a bowl, and we would say that the Ballyhallion's like a cup that attaches onto the bowl. So you get huge amounts of water coming down the Ballyhallion. So it is ideal for nature-based solutions, but there are also lots of other sections of the catchment that we've identified now that are possibilities for moving forward. So just to show you the flooding partners, we have different people engaged in this: flood consultant, landowner liaison officer, which is very important as a constant in the project, so they keep in contact with everyone. Ecologist, a works contractor, and then about promoting and managing the project then. And then it's funded by 4 different funding organisations, including Donegal County Council. So in terms of community engagement, that's really critical in the project. So we haven't been able to get out as much with COVID. So we've been delivering things to the community, maps. We're having a community consultation tonight online, and we've also developed a guide to flooding called Flooding 101. So just in summary, we feel that for nature-based solutions to be successful, the collaboration between a whole range of stakeholders is really critical. That local knowledge is so important. We need it when we're looking through the data for Clonmany. What do we know about flooding? We find out much, much more when we go to historical data and when we talk to people personally on the ground. And we've been able to bulk up that knowledge that we have on historic flooding. The other thing that's very important is training people and supporting volunteers to be able to help out in this. People need to understand how these nature-based solutions work, and also what they can do to help them to work and also to maintain them in the long term. And also just finally to say that supporting organizations on the ground, and you mentioned that as well about, as part of the climate action plans that we're supporting organizations, that's really important. That administrative burden is very onerous. I'm employed to do this, but most organizations are doing this on a voluntary capacity, and it does put people off. So reducing administrative burden would be great for increasing the output on these projects. So thank you very much, everyone.